Hello, this is Chef Marcus Giuliano from Aroma Thyme Bistro in Ellenville, New York, the beautiful Hudson Valley, just 90 minutes north of New York City. And Aroma Thyme was the first certified green restaurant in upstate New York. And I am your chef on a mission. Today's mission is seafood labeling. This has been pretty big in the media recently about seafood being mislabeled, and I've blogged about this a couple times because I'm a stickler on truth in menu and truth in advertising, and fish is unfortunately one of the most the easiest thing to falsify what it is and where it's from. So I've been a long time advocate of sustainable seafood and correctly labeled seafood. There was an article out last week that even my parents told me about. They saw, I guess, on mainstream media. In Massachusetts, 183 different fish samples actually came back as being mislabeled after they were sent to the lab from grocery store and from restaurants too. And it's so easy to mislabel seafood because really, how many of us are seafood experts out there? Not many at all. Even chefs, some chefs have no idea what they're doing when it comes to seafood. So what happens is you get big companies and restaurateurs and chefs that purposely mislabel seafood to charge a premium price for an undervalued species of fish. Now they both could be snapper, they both could be bass, but they're just different types, and they just tag something onto it and add the price up to make it seem like it's a more valued species and add the extra money on. And it's unfortunate. This has been happening for years. And I remember when I worked in Colorado, there was a chef there at a seafood restaurant that would openly just brag that, hey, I'm serving tilapia at $2.50 a pound and calling it snapper and getting $28 a portion for it. And it was just like, are you serious? You have to go out telling people this, you know? And it's really, you know, for me, I'm buying the real deal on snapper. I'm getting the line-caught yellowtail snapper that's in season out of Florida, and I'm paying $10 a pound for it, and you're paying $2.50 a pound for tilapia, and we're charging the same price. It's not that fair, and you're responsible. Really, us chefs and companies, we're responsible for all this, and they just go out and blatantly mislabel. I did a blog on Tom Colicchio on his grass-fed beef. I was mislabeled. I called the restaurant several times, spoke to the manager, spoke to the butcher in the kitchen. They didn't want to hear anything about it, and they kept labeling it, so I made a video. And then Tom Colicchio emails me, you should have contacted me first, you shouldn't have done this. No, you shouldn't have served mislabeled beef. You shouldn't have tricked customers. You should have been more educated, and you should have done it right to begin with. So when it comes to seafood, it's very easy. Now, here's the best thing to do if you're a consumer and you're buying seafood. In a restaurant, it's kind of hard, but in a retail store, and grocery stores are the worst place to buy seafood unless it has a high-end specialty seafood department in there. Once you de-skin, de-head, and debone a fish, and you're sitting with a piece of white flesh or any type of flesh, who knows what this is? It's a piece of white flesh. It's a piece of, you know, looks like albacore tuna. It looks like opet. What does it look like? It looks like mahi-mahi. You average consumers and average chefs do not know the difference in this. So once you clean a fish up and fillet and take the skin off, it loses all identity. You want to see the fish in its whole form. The head, the markings on the fish totally give away the species. So if you're looking at bass, wild bass versus farm bass. A wild bass, in its whole form, you see the stripes. Wild bass will have straight stripes. A farm-raised bass will have broken stripes because the genetics are not 100%, so it has a difference in appearance. But once the skin is off and the head is off, you see nothing of that anymore, and you don't know what you're buying, okay? They take a lot of underutilized seafood species and jack the price up. So, very, very important. Now, if you are a consumer and you are going to a fishmonger, develop a relationship with them, really ask a lot of questions. Now, stuff like that I just told you about bass is what they should be telling you. They should be educated and telling you, ask questions, say, how do I know that this is really this bass? What are the differences in salmon? How can I tell the difference in features? What's the difference in snapper? When is a snapper in season versus this snapper? And if you see snapper, they say, is this the most awesome? Is this the most prized snapper? Is there a snapper that you know that is more expensive or less expensive? Or how am I'm confused on snapper. Give me a lesson on snapper. A qualified fishmonger can do that for you. They'll go through and they'll educate you. Really, part of advertising now in our times is educational advertising, where somebody's talking to you about why you should be, or the benefits of buying something, saying, here's my price, why don't you buy this? So educational advertising, let them educate you, and hopefully they'll win your business. Now, in grocery stores are the worst places because they're so price sensitive. You know, sometimes it's not the grocery store's fault. I remember one time I went to buy turbo in a grocery store. I love turbo. Turbo was one of my favorite fish for a long time. I go to the grocery store and I had eaten turbo and cooked turbo extensively and knew what the flesh looked like. With the skin off, I knew it all. And I went to a grocery store, looked at the turbo, bought turbo, and I said, this doesn't look like turbo at all. He goes, it is. Starts arguing with me. I'm like, I'm just asking you. I have experience with turbo, and this doesn't really look like turbo, unless it's another variety of turbo, unless there's more to the story. And of course, he couldn't tell me anything, so I got upset. I really didn't buy the fish. And so when you go to a grocery store, they buy based upon price. So whether and this happens so much. These articles around mislabeling species happens much more than you think. So you need to really trust your restaurant and understand and get an education from the restaurant. Or if you're going to a seafood market, get an education. But the one thing, what was I going to say here? I got off on so many tangents. Oh, seafood, supermarkets, seafood price points. So you have what's called day boat fishing, where the boat goes out for the day and comes back and brings the fish in. Nowadays, day boats are not sufficient enough because look at a day boat if you go out of New Jersey or New York or parts of the East Coast here. There's too much pollution. You have to get way out, and these boats that go way out go out for 2, 3, 4, 5 days, 10 days, 14 days. So what happens is if they leave for the Georges Bank, they leave Gloucester, they go out, they start catching fish day 3, day 4, day 5. They're still catching fish day 9, 10, and 11. And it's let's say they're going out just catching cod. So you get back to the docks in Gloucester, and you land your catch of cod. Well, at the market, at the auction, or if you contracted a place to buy the seafood, they're going to have their choice of cod that is either 10 days old or 3 days old. And that makes a big difference in the price. So for instance, I don't support cod because cod is not as sustainable as it should be, even though it's been a staple in the Northeast for 500 years, for eternity. Cod is being really overfished at an alarming rate. So let's just use cod for instance, not as the means of me supporting cod, but you get cod back. If I were to buy cod from a reputable seafood vendor, I would pay more wholesale from that vendor than you could go to Safeway, ShopRite, any of these stores and buy it for full retail price at these grocery stores, because the grocery stores are getting the older fish of the boat. The vendor I would buy from would be getting what's called top of the trip, which means it was caught the last couple days, and that's the most desirable fish. It's the freshest. So the grocery store knows you're not going to pay $4 more a pound, because they have to put an ad in Sunday Circular competing against the grocery store right down the road from them. So you never pay $4 more a pound when the other grocery store has it for $6 a pound. So they're price competitive, price sensitive to us, the consumers, based upon what we're willing to pay or what we think we should be paying without educating us. So that's what happens. So grocery stores are not the place. If you really want top-notch seafood, you need to go to, I've always said this, like Ecofish. Henry and Lisa's Natural Seafood has a frozen line in health food stores. There's other brands out there that have immaculate tracking records and will tell you where the fish is from. And even like some of Ecofish's fish, Henry and Lisa's Natural Seafood, will do analysis of another company called Seafood Safe, which tells you the contaminants that are in the seafood, that actually tests the contaminants and make sure that they're you're not being exposed to harmful levels of mercury and other things like that are now prevalent in seafood. Seafood is getting much harder nowadays to buy clean sources. That's why a lot of people are turning to be vegetarians or vegans, because it's so hard to get clean sources. And a lot of these health gurus, it's just hard to get. So hopefully that helps you buy better seafood, ask better questions, and really demand better seafood when you go out to eat at restaurants and when you go to your fishmonger. Let them know, hey, that I'm just not going to buy anything you put up there. I want questions to my answers, and I want you to educate me. I want to make sure that this snapper is really this snapper, and this bass is really this bass, and it's just not some generic term being applied to bass, because there's really only 3 types of bass, but they take like 10 different species, even more, and just apply the term bass to it, because it's a sales point. Chilean sea bass is not bass, it's Patagonian toothfish. White bass, all these other things are really not bass. White tuna is not even tuna, it's escolar. So you really have to ask questions, you have to be aware, and if they can't answer the questions, don't eat it. That's the bottom line. I'm Marcus Giuliano. I'm a chef on a mission. Thank you for watching.